All right, I'm Chris Avina, American Outdoor News Podcast. I'm here with Regina Lennox and B. Frederick from Safari Club International. Guys, I know we have a lot to talk about. There's so much going on. It's bear season. Let's get rolling. So, um, B, I know we had discussed previously the Florida bear hunt. That takes place this weekend.
Just opened, yep. This past Saturday, December 6th. So just opened on Saturday, first season in a decade. Very limited number of permits available. Ended up being 172 permits over four different zones. So it's a
Okay.
3 week hunt this year. It's relatively attenuated compared to the framework that was approved. But yeah, just opened Saturday. Limited number of tags again, can't stress that enough. Very different than the last hunt, where it's a quota-based system. So yeah.
So that quota should be filled over the weekend. 170 tags is not a lot to fill.
Potentially, yeah. So there's a lot of news going around about anti-hunting groups that try to purchase some of the tags. So it was again done via lottery system. If you were drawn, then you still had to go in and complete the process and actually purchase the tag. So there were 172 available tags, and that was again done by the FWC and their technical experts and the scientists there that said, basically what's the highest number of female mortality offtake that we could have and not touch the bear population, where it would still be going up, but just at a slower clip, at a slower rate. And so
Mhm.
that's where they got that number. They actually, I think it was originally 180, 187, and they reduced it based off some new data that came in. So, very prudent state agency that's doing their job to manage this resource. And so it'll be interesting to see how many tags get filled. There are certainly, um, I don't think we'll see all of them get filled based off of, folks buying them with the intention of not using them. And then, again, it's only 3 weeks, so, weather dependent or
Yeah.
whatever it may be. So it'll be interesting to see how many tags actually get filled.
Do you think this is just a testing year to open it up to more permits in years to come?
Yeah, I don't know if testing necessarily is like you know, I don't know if it's necessarily a testing by any means, but it's certainly first step in the process of having that. FWC is very calculated in, what zones. They broke it up into 7 zones. Any zones that had less than 200 bears, it was not even an option to hunt there. The other four huntable populations. And so you're taking that 172 number and dividing it, obviously not equally, but I think one
Yeah.
zone only has 18 tags, I believe. So, again, it's just based on numbers. So FWC, like they manage any game species, whether it's deer, turkey, or otherwise, they're managing this resource. They're calculating, vehicle mortality. They're calculating, density and abundance. And that's where they got that number again, conservative on purpose. And then they'll use that data that they get from this year, as well as any other population data they have, and do it again for next year.
I think that part's really important, Chris. So despite Florida having a bear population exceeding an estimate of 4,000, and despite Florida having the second highest number of human bear conflicts in the country, Florida hasn't had a bear season in a decade.
Yep.
And so what FWC is missing is a hunter success statistic to work into the number of tags that they issue. So they'll get, hunter success from this hunt. So next year they'll be able to include that in their data calculations. And so I imagine you'll see a different allocation of tags incorporating that data, and the next year it'll
Yeah.
change, when they get more data from the hunter harvest aspect of it, like other states do.
Well, you'd think they would learn something from New Jersey. Their bear population was, you couldn't even let your kids play in the backyard without worrying about a bear coming in.
SCI has been involved in litigation defending the hunt, and I promise you, we have drawn numerous comparisons to the situation in New Jersey, where we were also in litigation for a very long time.
So I know you also have Louisiana that is just having a bear hunt after a number of years as well. How long has that been?
Yeah, so Actually, I wasn't personally involved in that, but and Regina may be able to help me out. But so this is the second year of the Louisiana black bear season after roughly a 35-year hiatus. So the Louisiana black bear population is a subpopulation of black bears. It's really a conservation success story, delisted from the endangered species list, thanks to some of our efforts from our legal team and otherwise. So they have. I think the first year they had 11 permits. Was that right, Regina? And I think it's 26 this year. It's mid 20s.
Wow.
So again, same thing. They very conservative estimate or conservative harvest rather on the first year. I think 10 of the 11. I think only one tag did not get filled if I remember correctly. And so then they adjusted those numbers based off of again population, abundance, density, and then hunter harvest success rates. So we have that there. So. Yeah, again just a huge conservation success story. SCI was involved on the local level with the chapters through grassroots, through our advocacy efforts, and then obviously through our legal efforts as well. Foundation was also super involved in doing some of the education efforts with these new hunters on appropriate hunting methods and how to clean a harvested bear and make wise use of the meat and pelt and all that kind of stuff. So really an awesome example of not just us, a lot of partners working together to have a sustainable use resource there in Louisiana.
Now, unlike Florida and Louisiana, Connecticut has never had a bear season.
Yeah, it is. It's a good point. So, when we're talking about Louisiana or Florida or even, I guess potentially some other states where maybe making changes. Connecticut's never had a season. So, we're in there advocating for sustainable use of this resource. There's nothing really to point back to say, 10 years ago we had this hunt like in Florida, 35 years ago in Louisiana, or whatever it may be.
Hmm.
That is just an example of bears, unchecked growth of bear population there and the impact that it can have,
Yep.
like we've seen in New Jersey, like we've seen in Florida. The state agency is been very supportive of again a very conservative and technically scientifically based harvest there and has testified to that. There's been some attempts in the legislature to establish a season that haven't gone anywhere, but yeah, we're hopeful that there will be some type of the way we can move that forward there in Connecticut.
Hmm.
Yeah, Connecticut didn't have a huge bear population, but it's expanded and now it's estimated to exceed 1,000 bears.
Yep.
Every other jurisdiction in North America that has a bear population exceeding 1,000 bears has a hunt to manage the population. And so Connecticut, doesn't have that history, but it is facing the same sorts of challenges that every other state and province is facing, which is how do you manage black bears,
Hmm.
particularly when they start to expand out of their core habitat and get into, areas where people are, and you
Yeah.
start seeing that increase in human bear conflicts.
Well,
I
you
think,
also have to put that into perspective. The landmass of Connecticut is vastly different than the landmass of Florida or Louisiana. So 1,000 bears in Connecticut, the contact is going to be more frequent than some of the other states.
It's the same sort of situation you see in New Jersey where you have these dense human populations and then these dense bear populations. And you see, I mean, Connecticut has the highest number of human bear conflicts in the country. And as you're pointing out, Chris, there's a real good reason for that.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's really, we made this point a lot in Florida. A lot of it to what we're just talking about now is habitat, right? Habitat dependent. So we would call it suitable habitat versus unsuitable habitat. So bears when they get pushed out or they expand their range, if the habitat's not there, that's when you see the reports of a bear on the surf, in the ocean on down in the Panhandle of Florida or in Disney. They closed Disney to
Yeah.
retrieve a bear there. At the Orlando airport, there's always bears. So these bears are expanding into unsuitable habitat, and typically that's going to involve, maybe suburban areas. Not always, but that will typically lend itself to more of these human wildlife, interface and conflicts. So that's what
Uh-huh.
happens. So again, it's a management thing. Obviously a habitat issue. Then it becomes a management issue as well.
Well, the bears in Disney, are they sure it wasn't somebody in costume? Now, I mean, I'm in New York, and I've been in the woods half my life, well, most of my life, and I remember never seeing a bear, and then all of a sudden they're just everywhere.
Yep.
And
And
the North American, or the American black bear in North America is a really big conservation success story, not just in Louisiana, like Bee mentioned, but around the continent. Bear populations have just exploded in a lot of places and expanded
yeah,
into new habitat, as Bee was saying. And that is fantastic, but it also is a challenge. And that's, we do a lot of bear advocacy at SCI. We always make the joke we should be, Bears International, but it's because of that great success. And bears certainly do eat nuts and berries and things like that, but they also eat meat. And so they can cause it's a little bit
mhm,
different than when you have a bunch of deer or an increase in your deer population. Increase in your bear population
yeah.
requires some management interventions that um, other species like ungulate species may not require.
It's funny you say that because we had a club in New York, 600 acres, and the bear population on that particular property was so large, we would take more bear than deer every year,
Hmm.
which led us to believe that they were eating the young deer, the fawns, or happenstance or whatever came their way. But yeah, we took more bear than deer, and they just show up. They're silent. You don't hear them coming. You just look, and there they are. It's really an amazing thing.
It's, we always in litigation we hear, oh, bears, they're this slow growing species.
No,
But in reality, half of the adult female bear population has a litter of cubs every year.
yeah,
And there's a lot of high quality habitat, particularly in the eastern United States, where the average bear litter size is like 2.5 cubs per litter. So basically, every time that
yeah,
female bear has a litter of cubs, she's replacing herself and her mate, and the cub survival rates are really high because this habitat is quality is high. And so you can see increases in bear populations like in New Jersey that are just exponential.
yeah,
Um, Particularly when you have this high quality habitat, you don't have the issues of vehicle collisions or things like that. So, you really do see these bear populations just explode in certain areas. And like I said, it's a good thing in terms of we've done a lot of great work in this country to conserve species that once upon a time were not so abundant, but it does present these management challenges. And hunting is widely recognized, including by researchers at the International Bear Management Association, as the only way to actually control bear populations.
Yeah,
well,
to that point, like actually Deep, the Connecticut Deep, the state agency there that handles wildlife, they actually have a really insightful PowerPoint. I don't know that it's still on their website. It was for a while, and they were talking about this issue. So it looks at other states and their management, and again, abundance, population abundance estimates, season, no season, things like that. But whether it's basically any state, the kind of general number that's accepted for offtake that's going to level it out, basically it's not going to decrease population, but the population will not increase, is a 20% harvest of the total population, which if you think about it in terms of like New York or Maine or West Virginia or Virginia, states that have huge bear populations, that's a big number, 20% of the total
yeah,
population. In most states, I think almost every state, I need to get back and look, and maybe one or two that we're getting close to that number. But most states aren't hitting that 20% number. So bears are still growing, and exponentially depending on again that offtake. So if you think about a potential 172 permits again, obviously just for Florida, based off of over 4,000 bears, you can tell that that's not going to have really any impact at all. Maybe
no,
slow the population just slightly. But that's just that's the number that's widely accepted as what you would want to achieve as an offtake to keep the population steady.
I agree. I agree. And, it just goes to show that hunter conservation works.
Mhm.
Where, a species was lacking in certain areas, they flourish over time because of our efforts. And, that although the bear population does need to be thinned out in Florida and some of the other states, uh, it's going to be what it's going to be. Let them grow.
Yeah, well, there's not, as B said, there's not really a choice. Hunter harvest just hasn't been enough to manage them completely or keep them stable. But you're 100% right, Chris. It is a conservation success story where, better management of habitat, better protection of habitat, the investment of funds, a large part of which come from hunting license fees and the federal match, 3-for-1 match under the Pittman-Robertson Wildlife and Sport Fish Restoration Act. You have this money that has done a lot to help expand habitat. And when you provide habitat to wildlife, they fill it up.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing, and it's definitely a good thing.
Well, what do you see in Louisiana in the future? I mean, the permits were, very sparse.
Well, like Florida, they are maintaining a very conservative number of permits. So, as B said, Louisiana black bear was an Endangered Species Act listed subspecies. It's the only black bear subspecies that's ever been listed under the ESA. And so, Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries and Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries Commission has, rightly decided to be really conservative in the number of permits that they've issued. But what they've seen, very much like Florida, is their bear population estimates have increased, but also they're seeing a lot of bears outside of their core habitat.
Hmm.
And when that happens, as B said, you have an increase in conflicts, you have an increase in vehicle strikes. And so they increased the number of permits in the most densely populated bear area, just to relieve a little bit of that pressure. It's not
Yeah.
going to do a ton, like B said, because it's not hitting the really the maximum harvest rate, but at least it's going to slow some of the population growth a little bit. Our biologist, Maria Davidson, uses this analogy of, you know, we're doing so well in the United States. Bears are like a bucket full of water, and the water bucket's filled to the top. And now you have water sort of uh, sloshing over and pouring out on the sides. Hunting's like sort of dabbing a sponge around it.
Yeah.
So you're cleaning up a few places that hopefully will reduce conflicts and improve the tolerance of bears in those areas. Um, so that's good news. And SCI has been a big supporter of the opening a hunt, but we're also a big supporter of maintaining those conservative levels of permits, at least right now until the hunt's more established, until to make sure that there's no negative impacts on the bear population.
Are there any restrictions in Florida, Louisiana, as far as shooting a sow with cubs, things of that nature?
Yeah, I'll speak to Florida, more intimately familiar there, but yeah, you hit the nail on the head. So no sow with cubs. I believe the minimum weight's 100 pounds. Need to double check. I'm pretty sure 100 pounds, nothing less than 100 pounds, no sow with cubs. This first year, there's no hunting with hounds. They're going to phase that in. They did allow for archery tackle, and they did allow for feeding stations as well. So the main one would be sows with cubs and the weight.
Okay,
And
because
it's the same thing in Louisiana, also restricting the harvest of sows with cubs. They don't permit dogs in Louisiana. They do permit the harvest over bait, but it's what you can use as bait is restricted. So they're pretty highly regulated hunts. And again, that makes sense because they're new hunts. We want to
yeah.
make sure everybody's doing the right thing, get people used to hunting bears there because they don't have the tradition that you have in New York or
Hmm.
Pennsylvania, where I saw somebody harvested a 700 bear over the
Yeah,
weekend.
that's true. But it also comes down to ethics. Uh, are you going to shoot a sow with cubs? I personally wouldn't. I have actually sat in my stand and watched for about 45 minutes a sow with two cubs, and then all of a sudden they just took off. So I
Yeah,
grabbed
I
my
think
bow.
part of the and actually the judge mentioned this in the recent decision in Florida. Part of the um, argument for the to continue on with bear season this year was now in December. Most of the females sows will be denned up right now. So obviously not all of them. The bears on the landscape still that aren't in the den this time of year, even though the climate in Florida is a little bit warmer, will still be, male predominant over female. So that was another reason where, again, there's the likelihood of filling all 172 tags is almost zero. The likelihood that they're all female is zero. So, again, it's the numbers from the agency are purposely, conservative for that reason.
I would just like to add though, while I agree with you, Chris, on the ethics issue for a sow with cubs, you might have a hunt that's trying to reduce the bear population, and then you may be really trying to target sows. And certainly nobody wants to see little cubs orphaned. But if you have a bear population that is expanding at a rate that's really negatively impacting human bear relations, and we saw this in New Jersey, you may be wanting to harvest more females in the population.
Sure.
And that's just one of the decisions that wildlife managers and state wildlife commissions have to make. And it can be a hard decision, but with human expansion into what was formerly bear habitat, with bear expansion into what's been primarily human habitat,
Yeah.
sometimes managers have to strike that balance.
And I will add, whether it's Florida or any other state along the East Coast or even out west, wherever, the sometimes it's easy for anti-hunters to vilify hunting with hounds or hunting over feeding stations or bait. But to your point about ethics, really what that does is allow the hunter to identify exactly what they're looking at here. So to get a better idea, whether it's a boar, sow, male, female, a rough estimate of the weight, that kind of stuff. So it allows that hunter to make a conscious decision. Is this a bear they want to harvest based off of their objectives, whether it's for the state or their, private property or whatever it may be. So it really allows that extra time. Obviously there's tradition, other stuff involved as well, but it does allow the hunter to really look at that species really well and see if that's what they want to take.
Agreed. Agreed. And just shooting a sow with cubs, the cubs aren't going to survive. So that's something else to think about as well.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, I definitely appreciate you both taking the time to speak to us today. If you haven't become a member of Safari Club International, I urge you to go to safariclub.org. Definitely check it out, sign up. Don't forget the convention coming up in Nashville, February 18th to the 22nd. An event not to be missed. And if you have not subscribed to the American Outdoor News Podcast, hit the subscribe button now, and we'll see you all again next week.
Thanks, Chris. Really appreciate it.
Thank you,
My
Chris.
pleasure.
We love our children. We protect them. We guide them. We prepare them for life in the world. With all that we do, from deep in our hearts, we cannot control all things. Life-threatening illnesses and disabilities affect far too many of our children each year. While we cannot change the circumstance, we can make dreams come true. Dreams to provide hope, to provide spiritual healing and strength, to provide moments of happiness and relief in the hardest of times. We can give a glimmer of light and hope in a time of darkness and despair. Join huntofalifetime.org to help make dreams come true, to provide hope for children with life-threatening illnesses and disabilities. Hunt of a Lifetime is a nonprofit organization fulfilling dreams for hunting and fishing trips to youth 21 and under with life-threatening illnesses and disabilities. Visit huntofalifetime.org to learn how you can make a difference.